Rafi signed a short-term contract with an uneasy smile. The house stood at the end of a long, gravel drive, a squat stone place wrapped in dark ivy and high windows. The owner, an elderly man named Toma, lived alone and moved slowly in the way of someone who had learned to measure his steps. "It's simple," Toma said, voice like dry leaves. "You water the small things. Don't let strangers in. And never, never answer the knock at the bedroom door after midnight." Rafi nodded because he needed the work. He needed the quiet money for his sister's medicine and the rent at the back room he kept above a bakery. As he walked through the rooms that first day, Toma showed him the small ways of the house, where the coals sat, which curtains kept wind away, which jars held the extra tea. "Do you have anyone who can vouch?" Toma asked. "Only my sister, Mina," Rafi said, and he regretted the name, because old voices have ways of staying. Toma tapped a cane on the floor. "No callers. Keep the lamps lit at night. If you hear a knock when the moon is thin, do not answer. Lock the bolts. Say no name." Rafi promised. That night, the house seemed larger than the map in his mind. It stretched its made-up rooms like a lazy animal. He placed his small suitcase by the narrow bed and tried to listen for anything besides his own breathing. Before we continue, show some love. Like the story, subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who loves African tales. And in the comments, type, "Where are you watching from?" On the second night, Rafi found a rule easy to keep. He woke to the tick of a clock and a wind that stitched at the corners of the curtains. He read a letter from home until his eyes stung, then put the paper in his pocket and walked slowly toward the hallway to close a window. In the kitchen, he met Toma, who smiled with one corner of his mouth and set out honey on a plate. "You sleep well?" Toma asked. "I will try," Rafi said. They talked about little things, about how the potatoes were planted in spring years ago, about a neighbor who swore the well had good water. Toma liked to tell stories in small portions, like bread broken for a single mouth. At 11, Rafi checked the locks and lit 2 lamps. He stood by the bedroom door and said the rule aloud to himself, as if stating it would make it work. "You do not answer." At midnight, the house lay quiet, but somewhere far off a dog barked twice that turned into nothing. Rafi's thoughts kept returning to Mina, her laugh, the way she hummed when she folded clothes. He told himself to sleep, that he would not answer. He did not, and the house did not seem to notice. The second night passed without knocks, and he woke slow and grateful that he had listened. The third night was different because the silence changed its shape. Rafi had been up late mending a tear in Toma's coat when the first knock came, soft, measured, the kind of knock that meant someone knew the rules. He froze with the needle in his hand. The clock in the hall read 12 when he held his breath, and the knock came again. It was from the bedroom door down the short corridor, the one at the end of the house where windows watched the moon. Rafi sat very still in the doorway of the sitting room and told himself the rule, never answer. He did not move. Then the knock shifted, slow at first, then syllables like someone shaping a name. Alright, it stopped. His heart turned a little. The knock waited like a listener. "Rafi." The second time, the sound became a voice. It was low, wet, and there was something like a memory in it, an old comfort folded wrong. Rafi's hands went cold. He thought of Mina. His mouth opened. He did not speak. The voice said his name again, and this time it threaded through the wood and into the house like smoke. "Rafi," the voice said, softer and oddly familiar. For a moment, he believed it was Mina's laugh made into a knock. He rose, breath small and quick, and every rule Toma had given him pressed against the inside of his ribs. The house held its breath with him. Rafi stood in the hallway, staring at the bedroom door. Every instinct told him to run, but something in the voice hooked him like a hook catching cloth. It sounded like Mina's voice, soft, warm, gentle. "Rafi, please." He staggered back a step. "No," he whispered, forcing his mind to hold on to the rule. "Do not answer." His hand almost touched the door. "Mina," he asked before he could stop himself. The voice replied at once, too quickly, as if it had been waiting. "Yes, it's me." "Open the door, Rafi. Please." Rafi's eyes widened. That was not exactly Mina's tone. Mina never sounded desperate. She had never pleaded like that, not even when doctors told them they might not have money for medicine. "You're not Mina," he whispered. The voice changed, like a cloth tearing. Now it was lower, slow, dragging sound across the wood. Rai-a-fi. Timber groaned. Something scraped the door. Not fingers, something harder. Nails? Rafi backed away, heart punching his ribs. "Toma," he shouted. The old man appeared at the far end of the hallway, holding his cane like a spear. His eyes were sharp, angry, terrified all at once. "Did you answer it?" Toma hissed. "No," Rafi stuttered. I only spoke a little." The old man's face collapsed into horror. "Never speak back." The knock came harder. Bang, and Rafi jumped. "Go to the living room," Toma ordered. "Do not turn your head. Do not look at the shadows. You must pretend you heard nothing." Rafi forced his legs to move. The knocking followed him through the house like footsteps pressed into wood. "Rafi," the voice taunted. "I know where you sleep." Rafi reached the living room, breathing like he had run miles. Toma shut the door behind them and slid 3 metal bolts across it. "Sit," Toma commanded, "and listen." Rafi sat, shaking. Toma leaned close. "The thing at the door is not human. It learns who you love so it can copy their voice." Rafi swallowed hard. "But it sounded like my sister." Toma nodded. "That is how it begins. It asks for your trust. It asks for your voice. If you answer, it learns your door. And once it learns your door, it learns your name." Rafi clenched his fists. "Why didn't you tell me that?" Toma's face tightened, and he lowered his voice. "If I told you everything the first night, you would not have stayed. I need you here." Rafi stared at him. "Need me? For what?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached for a drawer and placed a small brass object on the table. A key. "There is a locked room, above the stairs. You'll see it tomorrow, but not tonight." The knocking suddenly stopped. Silence rolled through the house like thick smoke. Man didn't answer. Instead, he reached for a drawer and placed a small brass object on the table. A key. "There's a locked room, above the stairs. You'll see it tomorrow, but not tonight." The knocking suddenly stopped. Silence rolled through the house like thick smoke. Both men froze. "When it stops knocking," Toma whispered, "it has started thinking." Rafi felt cold iron slide through his spine. "It never gives up, does it?" "Not once," Toma murmured. "Not until it finds the door open." Rafi stood, pacing. "I want to leave. First thing in the morning." Toma closed his eyes. "Leave if you want, but if you do, it will follow you. Once it knows your name, there is nowhere you can go that it will not find." The silence pressed tighter, like the house was leaning closer to listen. Rafi whispered, "Then what do we do?" Toma replied, "We survive the night." The lamps flickered. A rush of cold air slid under the door like fog. Rafi wrapped his arms around himself. "Toma," he whispered, "how do you know all this?" The old man's jaw clenched. "Because once, many years ago, I answered the knock." The fire crackled. Rafi leaned closer. "What happened?" Toma rubbed the back of his hand the way someone touches an old scar. "I was newly married. My wife, Lena, sang like bells. One night, after midnight, I heard her voice behind the door. She begged me to let her in. I thought she was hurt. I opened the door. His voice cracked like old wood. Rafi waited, breath caught. "There was nothing there," Toma whispered. "Just the cold. Then the house changed. It took weeks. The thing whispered every night." Lena stopped smiling. She said she heard scratching inside the walls. Then one night, she disappeared. Rafi's stomach twisted. "You think that thing took her?" Toma nodded slowly. "It takes what you love first. Then it takes you." The lamps dimmed again. A long, slow scrape dragged across the outside of the living room door. Not a knock. A drag like claws tracing the wood. "Toma," Rafi mouthed. Toma lifted a trembling finger to his lips. The door handle jiggled. A whisper seeped through the crack. "Rafi, I'm cold." Mina's voice again, perfectly shaped, perfectly wrong. Rafi covered his ears. "Stop using her voice," he shouted. The whisper laughed. A soft, broken laugh. "I could be anyone," it breathed. "All I need is for you to open the door." Toma grabbed Rafi's wrist and held it tight. "Do not speak another word. Not one." The scraping at the door grew sharper, angrier. Rafi felt every sound cut into him. The whisper shifted, no longer trying to sound like Mina. It became deeper. He heard breathing, slow, thick, like an animal learning how to pretend to be human. Then the voice spoke again. You opened your mouth, it hissed. Now I know your fear. The room's shadows trembled along the walls like dark fingers. Rafi backed toward the fireplace. Toma, this is impossible, he said in a shaking whisper. Nothing can think like that. Nothing can know what we fear. Toma grabbed Rafi's shoulders. The locked room upstairs. Inside, it is the reason the creature came here in the first place. Rafi stared at him. What's in that room? Toma's voice was small. Something I once. Something I had long ago. The doorknob suddenly twisted violently, as if someone yanked it. Bang! Bang! The creature pounded harder. Toma forced the key into Rafi's hand. Go, he ordered. Upstairs. Now. I can hold it back for a short while. Rafi hesitated. Toma, you can't go. Toma barked. The door shook on its frame. Rafi ran up the staircase 2 steps at a time, nearly tripping in his panic. Behind him, he heard Toma shout, You will not have him! Then a roar, unlike any sound Rafi had heard, echoed through the house. Rafi reached the locked room, shoved the key into the rusty lock, and twisted. The door creaked open, revealing darkness. His breath caught. Something inside the room moved. Rafi stepped inside. The room smelled like old rain and forgotten memories. A single wooden chest sat in the center of the floor, covered in carvings, symbols Rafi didn't understand, but he sensed meaning pulsing beneath them. Open it, a soft voice whispered behind him. Rafi spun around, heart slamming in his chest. No one was there. The air chilled. Open it, the voice repeated. Not Mina's voice, not Toma's voice. A third voice. Come. Female. Rafi knelt and touched the chest. A strange warmth crawled into his fingers. He opened the lid. Inside lay a small locket, silver, heart-shaped, engraved with the name Lena. A woman's voice drifted through the room. Do not let it out. Rafi gasped. Lena. The voice trembled like wind on broken glass. Toma thinks he trapped the creature. But the creature trapped me. If you destroy the locket, I will fade. But the creature will lose its strength. Choose. Rafi froze. Downstairs, a crash shook the walls. Toma screamed in pain. Rafi grabbed the locket. How do I destroy it? Fire, Lena whispered. Burn it. Rafi sprinted toward the door, only to see the hallway swallowed by shadow. A tall shape moved at the bottom of the stairs, crawling up the walls like a distorted shadow. It stretched toward him, its long fingers scraping the wallpaper. Rafi, the creature crooned. I found your door. Rafi clutched the locket to his chest and ran. Rafi flew down the hallway, nearly slipping. The creature climbed, its body bending in unnatural angles. Its face was no face, shifting like wet clay, grabbing voices from memories. I can be her, it said. Mina. Mina needs you, Rafi screamed. You are not my sister. He reached the fireplace just as Toma collapsed beside it, wheezing. Rafi dropped to his knees. Toma, look at me. The old man grabbed Rafi's shirt. The locket, burn it now. The creature slithered into the room, its long limbs absorbing the lamplight. It tilted its head, studying Rafi with empty hollows where eyes should be. Give me what is mine. Rafi pulled the locket back. This isn't yours. The creature's voice became a growl. Everything becomes mine when the door is open. It lunged. Rafi hurled the locket into the flames. The locket cracked. A scream, high piercing, filled the room. The creature shrieked as black smoke tore from its body. It clawed at its own throat. And oh, it roared. Flames surged higher, glowing white. Toma shouted, Don't look at it, Rafi. Look at me. Rafi did. The house shook. The creature's body shattered into ashes that vanished into air. The room fell silent. The fire burned low. Toma lay on his back, exhausted, tears streaking his face. She's free, he whispered. Rafi helped him sit up. Lena. Toma nodded once. For years, I thought I saved her by locking that room. But I only trapped her with the creature. Rafi swallowed hard. What happens now? Toma looked around the room, now peaceful. The house is finally empty. The lamps steadied. The shadows softened. Outside, for the first time, dawn touched the windows. Rafi let out a breath, long, shaky, relieved. He stood and walked to the front door. He opened it. Fresh air rushed in. Birds sang. No whispers. No knocking. Toma placed a gentle hand on Rafi's shoulder. Thank you. You did what I never had the courage to do. Rafi nodded. Goodbye, Toma. He stepped outside. The morning light warmed his skin. As he walked down the gravel path, he heard one last whisper, soft, peaceful, riding the wind. Thank you. It was Lena, finally free. Rafi did not look back. The house behind him stood still, empty, harmless. He walked toward the open world, toward Mina, toward life. The rule echoing quietly in his memory. Never talk to whatever knocks after midnight. And he never did again. Please like and share, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.